Business Growth Talks podcast is created and hosted by Mark Hayward. In this show, we talk about how to grow a business in the growth stage. The growth stage is often marked by rapid developments, increased revenue, and an escalating customer base. In each episode, we talk to entrepreneurs and business owners who have grown businesses, and we cover topics like scaling processes, market expansion, financial management, human resource and talent development, and customer retention. If you are looking for actionable advice, tips, and techniques on how to grow, run and build your business, this is the podcast for you.
Today we have Eric Eden, who is a seasoned marketing leader with over 20 years worth of experience in technology sector. As the founder and chief marketer at Workverse, he leverages his expertise to create a next-gen social media app for business networking, helping top performing executives at growth companies enhance their brand and achieve remarkable success. Throughout his career, Eric has built a high caliber marketing teams implementing cutting edge marketing technology solutions and driven demand in B2B marketing, significantly increasing shareholder value for growth companies. His strategic vision and dynamic marketing strategies have consistently accelerated businesses to their highest potential. Beyond his professional achievements, Eric is passionate about sharing his knowledge through his podcast. Here he highlights top performers and brands, offering listeners valuable insights into the best marketing practices and inspiring them to achieve remarkable growth in their ventures. Hello, how are you today, Eric?
Excellent. Thank you for having me on, Mark. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about your business, your journey, as well as your clients as well. We're going to go deep into that as well. And the marketing industry, how it's changed over the years and what you're doing now with your startup. So, first question that I ask all of my guests is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
A business mindset to me is a growth mindset because for the last 25 years, I've worked for venture capital and private equity-backed companies. What gets me out of bed in the morning every day is being a driver of growth. And that's what I love doing. That's what I'm passionate about. And I do think intensity matters. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, if I'm going to put my time into something, I want to be at a 12.
So you say about intensity. So do you mean your involvement is quite intense? So for any ventures or any activities that you're doing, you're in 110%? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, why even bother? You have to be really excited. You have to be passionate about it. That's something you can't really train into people. You can't fake. You really have to love what you're doing or you don't. And if you don't, then maybe you should do something else. But all the things that I do, working for companies, doing growth marketing, it's because I love doing it. I'm passionate about it. And what that enables is I can wake up every day excited and say, I can get through these 20 meetings. I can do it for 12 hours if I have to. And you can't always sprint all the time, but knowing how to bring that enthusiasm and that passion, I think, is really important.
And the show's called Business Growth Talks. How would you define growth marketing? Because you've used that as a term. I just want to delve a little bit deeper into what your definition of that is.
2 dimensions to growth marketing. The first is, in having worked for venture-backed companies, private equity-backed companies, in a lot of ways, those investors think about marketing in the most scientific ways of measuring it. They've invested in 10,000 SaaS companies, and I've worked as a CMO for a lot of SaaS companies, and they have the most advanced metrics of they want you to get to 100% growth in revenue year over year. But then beyond that, they're like, what is a customer acquisition cost by channel, by product line, by geography? And what is the payback time for the lifetime compared to the lifetime value? And they have just very sophisticated ways of looking at marketing as an investment. But broadly, if I had to summarize it, I would just say PE and venture-backed companies are looking to be in the direction of 100% growth a year. And so that's a really high bar, like doubling what you're doing. Like you have to really get up every day and be like, how am I going to do this? It doesn't just happen organically or naturally. You really have to drive for that. So I think that's the first dynamic of it. And the second dynamic of it is a little bit more cultural. I think of one of my biggest strengths as being a driver of growth. And some of the people I've worked for have said that I'm a purveyor of chaos because I just come in every day and I'm just like, so I've been thinking, I have this idea and we could do this and we could do that. And they're just like thinking about all the work that entails. And so for some people, it's just overwhelming. But for me, that's what it takes to get to something like 100% growth.
And the thing about marketing is that there is an element of art as well as science in marketing. I get the metrics, I get the measurables are incredibly important for marketing. If you can't measure it, there's no point in doing it. But what's your view on the, let's say, the more artistic side of marketing and advertising?
So I think you have to have a really great story about your company and what you're offering and who you're offering it to in order to get any kind of real growth. And that product market fit, as people often like to call it, the more technical term, only comes when you have this really well thought out story and purpose behind what you're doing and understanding who you really want to make it available to, because you can't be everything to everybody. And so I think that the rubber meets the road, to answer your question, when you have that story dialed in and you can then be creative about, there's 100 different ways to tell that story.
And the storytelling is so important in branding, being able to tell that story and be able to share that, which then connects with your clients or your leads and your customers.
Absolutely.
Right. Moving on. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
So I think originally in college, I was a journalism major before I was going to be a marketer. And I grew up in Ohio. I went to college in Ohio, and I came to Washington, D.C., and I worked for an editor, and he said, I can hire you as a journalist because you're graduating, but I can only pay you $7 an hour, and you're probably going to starve to death being a journalist. That's what me and my wife have lived through. We've been journalists for 20 years, and it's not great. He's like, if you love technology and you love marketing, you should just go into technology and use your writing skills to do technology. And that was some of the best advice right out of college I ever got, and that's what I did. I went right into working in tech marketing. And it turns out that my journalism skills in college were amazing for that moment in time, because the dot-com boom was just starting, and being able to articulate ideas in emails to other executives and being able to communicate in meetings and make presentations in story format was powerful. People were like, who is this kid who's writing these long emails? And then suddenly I got invited to the meetings, and I was in the room, and I was part of the decisions. And from there, I kept building on that. So I think I can't stress enough how important being a great communicator is in marketing. I was fortunate to have that journalism training that gave me not just the writing skills, but also interviewing, presentation, PR skills. And I've just really been enthusiastic about applying it in the area of tech, because from the early days of the internet, I've been very passionate about it. And what's been really interesting to me about this journey, and it's been almost 30 years because I graduated in 1995, is just watching technology evolve over that amount of time. Because back in the late 90s, people were just like, the internet is a fad. It's gonna level off, and they kept doing this. It's gonna level off, Mark. And I worked in website hosting and e-commerce, and we were trying to get 10,000 companies to have e-commerce websites. And we call up people at a big sales team of 100 people, and we call up people, and they would say, you should get a website. And the company would be like, why do I need a website? I don't need a website for my business. And we were like, so you can sell things online, like e-commerce, and people would buy things with a credit card. And people laughed. No one's ever going to buy anything on the internet with a credit card. That's crazy. And you just look back on some of those things today as we're talking about new trends like AI, and people are like, it's a fad. Like, it's not really going to work. It's very inaccurate. I'm like, we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
exactly. So what made you so interested in technology?
I loved reading those magazines during the dot-com boom time, like Wired magazine.
Yeah.
If you look back on some of those moments, it was very inspirational how they talked about how the internet could transform business and could change everything. And in fact, it did just took 20 years, but it did really change probably almost every process in business.
Yeah.
And that got me excited. I saw that vision that people were laying out in the early days. There was a number of evangelists that were laying it out. I just got really excited about the potential of it. My first job was actually working for the original .com domain registry. So when I started there was only 100,000 .com domain names registered.
Right.
Today, there's 350 million domain names.
Right.
So in context, but the first company I worked at there, Network Solutions, 2 years after I joined, they had the most successful IPO of the .com era. And it was a really funny story because Goldman Sachs backed the IPO, and there was a lot of people at the company. They held a company meeting, and a lot of the employees were asking questions. But the internet at that point was more for research than commercial business. But Goldman Sachs, as well as a lot of others, saw the commercial potential. And someone on the research side and the tech side in the company stood up and said, I think you guys at Goldman Sachs just want to make money from the internet in this IPO. And the guy from Goldman Sachs didn't quite know what to say, so he just said, we're not the Red Cross. So it's just been a series of fantastic moments like that over the years working for growth companies where you see that magic.
Yeah, the thing I will go back to is, so I graduated 2001. I worked my first job at 22, something like that. And technology was all about having a tech department that did all of the support. And it has fascinated me over the years, so 20 plus years, how technology is now embedded into every aspect of business. So yes, you still have your tech department who help with the hardware if you're in a big corporate. I worked in corporate for 14 years, so we always had a tech department. But over the years working in corporate, I started then working in a area of the business that built software for other corporates. And I find it a fascinating evolution how technology has been very much a geeky, like it was just this super people who were able to do the developing side, and now that it's just become enmeshed into everything that we do. Social media, AI is going to be a game changer again, but how it's just seeped into everyone's consciousness and the ability to use it in your workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 20 years ago the phrase was software is eating the world. And I think that did actually happen. There's 10,000 SaaS solutions out there. And specific to marketing and working on growth marketing, a lot of the companies that I've had when we've looked and said, how many tools are we using exactly across marketing and across the company? There are some companies I've worked for where we're using 200-300 different SaaS solutions across different departments, spending millions of dollars a year. And I would just say marketing in itself, the tech stack within many marketing organizations is very fascinating of how it all works together and moving data between the systems. And you almost need a CTO within marketing these days to run the tech piece of it. It's so complex. I've had on the big teams that I've had, the big marketing teams, I've had several people I've had to rely on because I'm pretty technical, but it gets crazy. Let's just be honest. When you start tying together 15 different systems on top of these platforms, like I've been using Salesforce and tools like that for 20 years. And now the ecosystem on top of them is just so complex.
Yeah. So why marketing? When you moved from journalism into marketing, what was the thing that you thought, actually, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to get involved in?
So I've always had the view that marketing are real drivers of the business because they're out there in front, really ahead of product, really ahead of sales. And you're looking out and being the visionary for what does the market want? What is the competition? What is our positioning? How are we different? How are we better? How can we create a website to tell that story? And always being on top of that, and then being the facilitator across the other teams in the company to take that vision forward. And so I'm definitely a believer that, product marketing and product management to a large extent should be more, within marketing, or at least heavily involved from marketing than just marketing gives input. And so I think that's been a big part of it for me. It's because I'm a driver and I want to be involved in those decisions, and I want to be in the senior management meetings, and I want to be a voice and a seat at the table when they're having those discussions. Because if someone gives me a product that I can't market, it's not a marketing problem. There's nothing I can do. Like, I could spend millions of dollars, but if somebody hands me a lemon product, there's nothing I can do. And if I just went into sales, for example, same thing. If the product isn't meeting the market's needs, there's nothing I can do. But I can influence a decision internally from marketing. I can help get product market fit, and then I can then enable the sales team to sell it. And I just really enjoy a lot of the core functions in marketing, working across all the different channels to drive awareness and demand. I love events. I love the challenge, the Mad Men challenge of advertising and coming up with creatives. And so I love all the different aspects across the spectrum of marketing, is the answer to your question.
So give me an example of either something that you've experienced in a company that you worked in, or one of your clients experienced it, about maybe the disconnect between sales and marketing and how that can be damaging for a company's growth.
Yeah, I think sales and marketing alignment can be really tough at a lot of organizations. At the end of the day, you're on the same team. You're all in a boat together. Saying the hole is in the other side of the boat isn't particularly helpful. And so there is, especially when we're in a down market like we are right now, I see a lot of finger pointing at companies, people saying, you didn't give us good leads and you didn't close the deals, and it's not really constructive. The best experiences that I've had is when I'm at a company and we say, okay, marketing and sales has the same goal. We need to win X number of customers, X amount of revenue. It's a team effort. Let's do it together. And I think if you have a goal of 100% of the sales that happen should be joint initiatives between sales and marketing, that's a great goal in a way to start getting alignment. When you start trying to say who caused it, sales or marketing, and trying to pick it apart like that, it literally pits teams against each other. I understand a little bit why some management teams and investors do that, because they want to figure out where to best spend dollars. But it's counterproductive in the execution, because you're then setting up people for the finger pointing that's not really helpful.
And so you talk about being a growth marketer, which you mentioned earlier on. So is the measurement side of marketing, how do you break that down? So I'm just thinking for my audience, thinking about if they want to get double the profit, double the revenue by next year, what are the key metrics that they should be looking into to be able to get that sort of growth for their business?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, business enthusiasts, ready to boost your entrepreneurial journey? Tune in to the Growth Gear Podcast with Tim Jordan, presented by Carbon 6. Tim dives into cutting-edge business growth strategies and new brand insights. Whether you're a startup founder or a seasoned exec, gain the tools to elevate your business. Subscribe to the Growth Gear with Tim Jordan on your favorite podcast platform. Shift into high gear. The Growth Gear is your guide to fast-paced business success.
So I think the most important thing is to treat marketing like an investment. So for every dollar you spend, can you get $10 back? That's the dream. Marketing should essentially be 10% of revenue. At growth companies, a lot of times it goes up to its 20% of revenue. So can you get $5 to $10 back for every dollar you spend in revenue? So if you're going to spend $10,000 on a marketing program, the math should be pretty simple of I need to get $50,000 to $100,000 in sales in this. I think where things go off the rails is when people come up to me and say, let's spend $10,000 to go to this trade show, and if we get one deal for $10,000, it paid for itself. And I'm like, no, it didn't, because marketing can't be 100% of the cost of a deal. And so I think that's where the math sometimes gets confused of what does it make sense to spend money on. But I also say, because I think most companies spend in marketing 50% of their budget on staff time and 50% on third costs like advertising and paying out for programs. And so you have to think about your time in that way as well, as if I spend a week on this initiative, is it going to generate the right amount of sales versus focusing on other things that would generate more? And so I think it's a game of prioritization. And I think when you think about the fully loaded costs, it gets harder for people to calculate it. But I've actually worked with a lot of tools, like trying to calculate this manually using Salesforce or HubSpot can be challenging. So there's attribution tools out there. Visible got bought by Adobe. I've used that in the past. With my team, we actually created a tool called Dig Growth, which is an attribution tool that looks across all the channels and helps you figure out what is the investment ratio per marketing channel for like events, for online advertising, for email marketing, etc. And then you can say, okay, which channels give us the best growth all the way down to the campaign and the keyword level. And that sort of focus on analytics is what's needed, because when people are doing investing, that's the level they go to, is the analogy I give. And if people can't be that analytical about it, you probably won't be successful, because it's just really hard to get good returns in a lot of the channels that are out there today. Because, for example, in online advertising, Google and Facebook just keep ratcheting up the costs to the point where, like, in a lot of cases, it just doesn't make sense to focus on that channel. And across all the channels you're working in, you want to get like a blended cost. And so as long as you know how to get to the blended cost across channels, that's great. But if you're not doing the work, you can't even get to the blended cost.
What for you is for a medium-sized business, 20 people, maybe more, but up to maybe 50 people, what are the key channels, marketing channels, which I know industry does differentiate it, but I'm just trying to think for my audience who are a medium-sized company looking to grow, what are the key marketing channels which are working for those smaller type businesses?
So I do think it does vary by business and by industry which areas you should weight your investment. So you have to customize in that way. But broadly, I would say your website is still the front door to your business today. And so a lot of companies underinvest in doing all the things they need to do for their website, which includes having a great website that tells the right story. I can't tell you how many companies I work for, I go to their website, I can't even figure out what they do. So it's a very simple thing, but if you can't explain in 20 seconds on your website what you do, then you're not going anywhere. And then once you've nailed that, you can start to think about, okay, how can I get traffic to the website? How can I do great SEO? How can I drive people into the website from other campaigns like email campaigns or online marketing? And can you get a certain number of people coming into your website where you have a great story laid out? I think that's where the rubber meets the road for a lot of businesses. And you can play with the different ways to get people to come to your website to drive the awareness. But I think a lot of people try to skip that step and go to do other things. Like they go straight to, let's create some great ads without having a great website. And
I had someone on my show about 6-9 months ago who said that a marketer who said websites, you need one, obviously, but actually social was where paid ads, whether it's on social or Google ads, were actually more valuable than spending thousands of dollars or pounds on a website. How would you counter that?
I think it depends on the business. I would think for a direct-to-consumer business, for example, where you're selling a very straightforward consumer product, and it's very clear from some ads or a social post like what it does and what the benefit is, then the website could be a lot more basic. Sure. I think for a lot of businesses that are B2B or that are even B2C, but they have a number of products and they do more sophisticated things, I still think having the best website is a great bedrock, and having good distribution on social media and in advertising is really what amplifies that. But if you don't have a great central place to send everybody to your website, I think that's probably a miss.
Yeah, I would agree. What would you say is one of your biggest challenges that you've faced either professionally or personally?
My daughter was listening to me doing like 10 Zoom calls in a row the other day. And after I got off for a couple hours, she just looked at me and she summarized it by saying, "You have a lot of problems." And I was like, they're not problems, they're opportunities. But I think there's a lot of challenges in business. But I think one of the biggest things currently right now is that marketing is changing so much. So what worked just a couple years ago, it's almost a completely different game today. And that's a bit disorienting, right? Because I can't necessarily just call on my 25 years of experience and say, oh, this worked 5 years ago at this company, I'll just do this. You have to be more creative than that. And I think that has a lot of different ways or reasons that's occurred. Some of it's because of COVID. Some of it's because we're in a challenging market right now. Some of it's because the channels themselves have evolved, like how you do advertising on sites like Facebook or LinkedIn or Google. The costs of those have changed in such a way that they're much more expensive. And so you have to be a lot more thoughtful. I mean, you can blow $10,000 on LinkedIn in one day and get nothing. And it's very disorienting is the word I'll use, is you have to be really thoughtful about being a investor of marketing dollars when all of these things are shifting. Even events, in-person events, which I've been a huge fan of over the years, the way you approach in-person events has really shifted. You can't just take a standard approach of spend $10,000 on a booth and hope it goes okay, because it probably won't. And the fully loaded cost of doing some of those events doesn't make sense for companies anymore. They have to think about it more creatively, like maybe we should do a dinner at the event or a reception, or we should get a speaking spot. Like people just have to approach things in a different way. And I think that's hard for a lot of people, including myself, to get your mind around, is watching that evolve. I think the final aspect of it is AI, of course, is changing things because it's disrupting SEO. It's disrupting content marketing, and it's just making those channels much harder.
Right, let's come back to AI because I do want to talk about it because it is one of those things like we talked about, like websites in the late 90s and social media in the early noughties, and now AI is going to have such a significant impact on everything. But before we get there, let me talk about your business. So you're the co-founder of Workverse. Why don't you tell me about that business, what it does, who you serve, and how you help people?
So Workverse is a next generation business networking site. So our goal is to be the next generation of LinkedIn, which is a very big goal. But the reason we think that this is important is because today, I believe that social media is full of spam, fraud, and bots. And
Right.
it's painful to live through. Like on a daily basis, people are trying to scam me. I'm just getting spammed like you wouldn't ever believe. And there's so much fraud. And it's just really frustrating to the extent that I think 30-40% of people just give up on social media sites. So I think we deserve a next generation of social media, broadly speaking. I think part of that is also related to ads and privacy and all of the issues that have come from that, which has been lawsuits around the world over. So I think that we deserve a next generation. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what is a better approach to businesses doing networking online. And so I think stats like their LinkedIn removed 100 million fake accounts in the last year. When I think about stats like that and try to get my head around it just what are we doing with our lives? So we're setting out to build something a lot better. We've been investing the last 2 years in millions of dollars in building something better, and we're launching it in the next month. And our goal is things like everybody should be verified, companies and people. There should be a better way for companies and people to build their personal and their company brand. There should be a better way to have a true marketplace where professionals can become a keynote speaker or a board member or an advisor for a company, in addition to just getting contract or full-time work. And I don't think a great marketplace exists for professionals to do those things today. And so I'm very excited about it. It's something we've invested millions of dollars and years working on. It's one of those things that I think about of building this is it's taken us 2 years just to get to launch. And you have to do the work in business to have a growth business. And sometimes it's stringing together 1,000 days of hard work before you have those glorious moments of an IPO or getting to $100 million a year in sales. But I think that having worked for 10 companies that have had successful exits over $8 billion, I'm pretty excited to be working on a company that I think will be worth billions of dollars, building it from scratch. It's a pretty awesome challenge. It's hard, it's fun, and it's inspiring.
So you're going to be a portal in the same way that LinkedIn, but you're going to be connecting people for other activities, not just jobs, but equally to look at their, as you say, like non-executive roles or keynote speakers or events, going to events. So you're trying to mesh the best bits of LinkedIn, the connectivity on LinkedIn, but you're going to be using other aspects of what a business person, what an entrepreneur wants to do on that platform. Is that right?
That's right, because I think that people want to be speaking at events and on virtual events like we're doing here on podcasts. People want to be an advisor or board member of other companies as they get. People want to have a better way to highlight their company and hire not just full-time people, but contract people and advisors. I think the work dynamic is shifting, so it's not all just about full-time people in the office 5 days a week. I think people are thinking about work in a different way. I think there will still be the full-time in the office every day, but a lot of people are thinking a lot more opportunistically about how do we work with agencies and how do we get advisors who are on contract. And so I think that it's moving away from an old regime of just it's all full-time work, 9 to 5, to how do you really give executives the best way to find new opportunities, and how do you give companies a better way to get the talent they need. And so having a true marketplace around that where everybody is verified, there's no spam, there's no fraud, and there's no bots is a huge win in my mind. I don't even know what to do with a lot of these sites that are just overrun with bots and fraud, which is basically all the major social networks.
Yeah. But the advantage, what LinkedIn grew from was an advertising place for advertising jobs. So you're going for the niche of the executives who want to do other activities. That's where you're starting. That's who you're targeting for your marketing, your advertising for Workverse. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's no advertising on our site. It's all subscription based, which
How much
I
are you
think
charging? How much are you going to charge for subscription?
so for professionals, it's going to be $200 a year to build their personal brand site and to compete for opportunities in the marketplace, to be a speaker, board member, contract work advisor. And essentially the idea is that if it's subscription based and there's not advertising, you avoid a lot of these problems that advertising creates. And I won't digress too deeply into all those problems. I think most people are, pretty frustrated with a lot of those things, from everything from them listening to your phone and then showing you ads based on that. A lot of it comes across to most people as just pure evil. Whereas I think the direction that the EU and a lot of other sane people are advocating is just let people subscribe to things that they're interested in, and let's just leave out all the creepy advertising stuff. And so I think it's an interesting way to go about it, to have everybody be verified, to just have it be subscription based, to get rid of a lot of the weird stuff that goes with the advertising and all the social sites. I think it'll be a much better user experience for people overall.
I'll be fascinated. I'll definitely be checking that out when that comes out in August. What are going to be your marketing strategies for that business?
We'll be back after a quick break.
When you think about propaganda, you probably think about Kim Jong-un and his funny little haircut. And you'd be exactly right. The podcast, This Is Propaganda, doesn't want you to believe that. They want you to question the ads you see, the news you read, the brands you love. What they don't want you to question is that they are advertisers themselves, peddling the same tricks they claim you fall for to make a living. If you need something to boycott, look no further than this show. Don't listen to This Is Propaganda.
So I think a lot of it is very interesting. It comes down to not building up huge numbers of followers or networks. I don't think we are trying to get people to replicate having 10,000 connections or 30,000 connections like LinkedIn did. I think it's more about quality of connections that actually give you opportunities. So for a lot of people, that's one of the things we have is the ability to run a personal board of advisors for yourself. And those people often feed you opportunities for consulting, advising, speaking. I have a group of like 10 or 20 people who've just referred to me most of the contract advisory work I've done over the years that I've worked with that know I'll do a good job for them. And so I think having a ability for people to have high quality connections, not a volume of connections. The answer to your question is it's going to be through referrals. It's going to be through partnerships with industry organizations, going to these trade groups and saying, get your 20,000 members who have these specific skills to get onto the platform, and then bringing other groups that are trying to hire those specific folks in. So I think it's partnerships with industry groups. I think it's influencers who bring in their trusted connections. I think that those are some of the initial things that we're focused on, because it's more of a quality over quantity thing. I don't think it's for everybody. I think it's for top performers. It's for the top 10%.
And how are you looking to grow that? So you're going to start off in August and you're going to build a community around that, and you're looking for referrals and trade organizations. I absolutely love that idea of bringing trade organizations in, because in a way they've already verified those people because they're already part of that trade organization. I think that's a very smart way to go. But so you are going to, is the ambition to keep it quite niche, or are you looking to broaden in maybe 5 years, 10 years time?
I would say I think anybody who's interested in being a part of it could be a part of it, but I think what we're going to try to focus on is the top 10% of performers. And the reason I say that is because I don't think everyone aspires to be remarkable. In fact, I think 80% of people aspire to be mediocre. Like they just want to do the minimum they need to do to get by. But for the people who want to do remarkable things, like they want to be a speaker, they want to be a thought leader, they want to build their personal brand, we're going to have a great way for them to do that. And the way to grow is if I bring someone like you and Mark to the community and I say, Mark, look, you don't have to replicate your thousands of connections on LinkedIn on Workverse. Just bring in 5 or 10 people that you trust, that give you advice, that give you referrals, and you bring those 5 or 10 people in. The maths really quickly work if we have high-quality people bringing in a small group of high-quality people, and then that just repeats itself. That is the viral way that we want to grow, as compared to just like blasting something out to millions of people on email or in advertising saying, hey, you could join this for $200 a year. I'm like, I'm not interested. Because you just get a lot of riffraff. You get a lot. That's where you just get a lot of people who don't really want what you have and you're trying to evangelize it to them. I think there's enough people out there, out of the billion people who are professionals around the world. I think there's got to be, 10 million to 100 million of them that really want to do something interesting. The stat I'll give you that really cements this is LinkedIn says they have 1 billion users.
Yes.
But the number of them that pay for LinkedIn Premium, which is about $700 a year, is 50 million. So that's 5%. So there's 5% of the billion people who are really serious about it. Though that 10% of people that are really serious about it is who we're interested in. I don't exclude anybody. Anybody can go for it if they want it, but I just think most people don't want to invest in it. They don't want to spend time, let alone money. So I think it's interesting to know who your audience is, and that's the sort of people that we want. But I think a lot of people have been turned off because of the fraud, the spam, the bots, the phishing attacks. It's crazy.
It's relentless on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and the number of spam messages I get is just off the chart. I'll definitely be checking out Workverse. Definitely send me a link. I would love to explore that a little bit further. But you mentioned earlier on about raising, spending millions of dollars. Have you raised money for that for your business?
Yeah. So my partners and I, we have all worked in tech for 25 years, and we took our gains from other tech projects we worked on and decided to invest in what we're doing in Workverse. We thought for a little bit, should we just go party and have fun, because that's a fun thing to do. But we're like, we should really take this hard-earned money that we've won from other ventures, and we should figure out how to multiply that money times 10x. And when I was talking earlier about treating marketing as investment, when you're playing with your own money, it really makes you think like an investor like that, because you could have been doing a lot of really fun things with that millions of dollars we've invested. I like to travel around the world. I've been to 63 countries. I like to do lots of fun adventure things. Look, I think I'm excited about growth marketing. I put my money where my mouth is, and we're building the product. We're investing in sales and marketing and customer success. And so I think that those are the right ways to think about it. But it's not free. You can't just start a business and have it be viral. And it's interesting because having worked on the side of being at venture capital-backed companies and then also working for a VC firm as an advisor to the 30 portfolio companies, I don't think a lot of people fully understand the dynamics of the power of investment. So I see a lot of companies that get, let's call it $5 million in funding, and the money is not used in the wisest ways. And ultimately, a lot of founders sometimes get ousted from companies because they don't approach it with intensity. They don't understand the investment that's been made. and they just don't get the right returns that investors want. So when you're your own investor, you have to hold yourself accountable, which is an interesting twist to it.
How have you evolved as a leader, would you say?
I've learned so many things. I think I've made more than my fair share of mistakes, probably. But I think I've learned how to do a couple key things is find good talent to bring in to the team. I've learned how to train and help people build skills over time. A lot of the things I'm most proud of is when I hired people and they worked for me and they grew over a long period of time, acquiring skills every quarter, every year. And I've had some people who started for me as a marketing associate who 10 years later became a marketing VP. And that sort of thing is really rewarding to see. And I think hiring more senior level people and guiding them to make the right decisions and to be successful is also rewarding in a different way. And as I've been an advisor to companies where people aren't directly working for me, one of the skills and one of the ways I've evolved is being able to persuade people when I can't order them what to do. That's a different level of Jedi skill, if you will, of like you have to persuade them to make good choices. And so I think a lot of these things have been pretty helpful to me over the years. Lots of really great lessons in each of those areas.
One of the questions I ask is what your risk appetite is. Now, obviously, you have made a big, bold move starting this business and setting up, but when did you, first thing, have you always been entrepreneurial? And secondly, when you made that decision to start Workverse, you obviously knew it was going to be at least a 2-year project to be able to build. How has your risk appetite evolved over the years to get to that point to set up this business?
So I would say I've always been entrepreneurial, but there's been points where I did different entrepreneurial things over the years that didn't work out, which made me revert to being more gun shy and more doing things like being a full-time CMO for a company. But I think the reason that I have veered back to the entrepreneur side is because there's only so far you can go in being an employee of somebody else where you're not really the owner, where you don't really get the majority of the upside for doing something really great. And so that desire that if I'm going to put 5 to 10 years of my life into something, giving it everything I have, 110%, I don't want all of that upside to go to other people, including other leaders in the company, investors. Like, why should they get 99% of the upside and I get 1% because I was a CMO? And I think the biggest risk is not taking risks. So if I don't take this risk, I'm never going to be an owner who sees the ultimate massive rewards of it. So the one thing I'll say on top of all this is just that most people think when they start the entrepreneurial journey that the success will come quickly. And I think the opposite is true, is the most successful companies that I've seen have spent 15, 20 years building their success. And so that's the risk reward ratio is, are you willing to spend 10, 15, 20 years of your life building something to get that reward out of it? You better be passionate about it. You better be committed to it, because it's not going to be an overnight success. I'm not saying that's never happened, but 99% of the time it doesn't happen from what I've seen.
I love this quote. I was an overnight success. It just took me 10 years.
Yeah. The biggest success that I've had in recent times is I was the head of marketing for the SaaS company Cvent for 10 years. And we grew it in that 10 years from $5 million a year in annual revenue to $200 million a year in annual revenue. And it took us 10 years to do that. And we didn't think it would take 10 years to do that. We would want it to have been a lot faster. But that's just what it took. And when there was an entire large group of people, we had 700 people in sales and marketing at the end of the 10 years. And it just took us that long to to build it up. And so when I say string together a couple thousand days of hard work to get to those glorious moments, that's like an example of what that takes. And I think most people just underestimate or would like it to be easier, but it's just not how it happens.
Look, thank you very much. We're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all my guests. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. First, and they're a little bit thought provoking. So the first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
I think the best decision I've made was to do what I'm most passionate about, to work in tech marketing and to be truly committed to it, just be all in.
All in. Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
I think the best piece of advice is to bet on yourself and to be willing to invest in yourself, to always be curious, always be developing, never just settle for the fact that you have this cushy job and a cushy salary and you could just coast. And so that's what's really helped me always just keep going for the next level.
Brilliant. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
There's been so many. It's hard to probably just name one because I've worked at so many large companies. But I would say one interesting thing is the co-founder of Workverse. We have worked together for almost 30 years. We met in my first job, Network Solutions, and in various ways, in different capacities, have worked together over the last 30 years. And one of the best things in business is if you can work with someone who is your best friend over the long term, it's really amazing. And I'm just fortunate to have had that experience with my co-founder.
Amazing. Tell me about a regret that you have.
So I think there's a lot of things that I look back and I wish I would have done differently. But one of the things is that with experience, I would just say I undervalued experience because when I was really young, when I was 25, I thought I knew everything. And now the way I think about it, I used to just say, I don't know why you need someone with 10 years experience to do this job. This is like easy. I can do this in my sleep. But as I got older, what I realized, and this is the way I actually explained something to my daughters, I was like, I asked my daughter who's 18, I said, 8 years ago when you were 10, what did you know? She said, oh, I didn't know anything back then. I was like, okay, that was like 8 years ago. I'm like, do you feel like a lot more right now? She said, oh yeah, I know so much more right now. I'm like, think how much you're going to know in 30 years when you have 3 times as much time. And I think about that in business too, is if I knew what I know now when I was 30, oh my gosh.
I know. I had this conversation with a friend of mine and we came to the conclusion we'd love to be 20 again or 18 again, something like that, but have the same knowledge as we're 44 of a 44-year-old. Going back to be an 18-year-old with your stupid mentality and your maybe your idealism or your naivety is not a good sign, but to go back to 20 and have the same experience you've got now would just be a masterstroke if it was ever possible.
So to answer your question, my biggest regret is maybe not quite valuing that, because if you value that, then you know how valuable your time is and that it is probably your most valuable asset. And if you're pushing yourself to get to that level of knowledge even faster, then that would be the benefit. I wish I had done more of that.
What are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of being able to deliver value through driving growth over the years for the different companies I've worked for. Helping them grow means the companies were able to get successful exits. The companies, the 10 companies I've worked for have had over $8 billion in exits across the companies. And that's a lot of value that went to the people who work for those companies and the investors who funded those companies. And there's also a benefit for all of the people who were customers of those companies because they benefited from the products and services that the companies offered. Because I purposely pick working for companies that have products that do make a difference for people. It's B2B, so it's not charity work, but it does make people more productive. It does make them more successful, and they wouldn't have been successful companies if the softwares and the solutions hadn't delivered that sort of value. So I'm proud of all of the things that driving growth at those companies has enabled. It is an aggregate group. It's a big number. It's a lot of impact.
Yeah. Why do you do what you do?
I think, like I said at the beginning of the episode, it really comes down to I love what I do. I'm passionate about driving growth. I love delivering that value. It gets me excited. I've had a lot of opportunities to work at companies where they're like, we'll give you a huge budget. It's just maintenance mode. Just give us like 5% more and everyone will be happy. There's a lot of jobs out there like that. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people who are okay with that. I am not. I want to work in an environment where I'm helping companies double, triple over 3 years. And some people are like, that's just insane. You are a purveyor of chaos. And I love doing that. That's impact. If I'm going to spend my time working every day, I would like to have that sort of impact versus just driving a little bit of value every year. It's like, why would I spend my years having minor impact when I could have major impact? So that's my why.
Amazing. What does legacy mean to you?
So it's interesting. I think about this with my podcast because I haven't done 500 episodes like you. I'm at about 150. But I think it's interesting as I do episodes and I sort of document a lot of the stories of my career as well as stories of other people. I think if I do 1,000 episodes and it's documented there, a lot of the stories and great things I've done, if people took the time to listen to even the ones they found interesting, it would be much better training or education than a lot of the academic exercises that people have to go through in school. And so I would like to think, to answer your question, that I can help people through my experiences and what I've learned and what I've achieved.
And your show is called Remarkable Marketing Podcast, is that right?
That's right.
So please share the link with me. I'll put it in the show notes as well. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
So workverse.com. My podcast is remarkablemarketing.io, and I'm on LinkedIn, so you can message me there, but just don't spam me or try to commit fraud against me. I get enough of that there.
No, thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I think Workverse is a great idea. Definitely share the details with me. I'd definitely like to jump on that, and there might be other people in my network who would like to do that as well. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a really interesting story about your journey as well as what you're doing now. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for listening to Business Growth Talks. This podcast is released every Monday, so don't miss an episode by subscribing to all podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Have a great day.